Hey, I want to say this before I dive in. Some of you guys in the last couple of years, you have served more at Hope City than you've ever served in another church. Some of you have given more financially to Hope City than you've ever given to another church or ever given in your life. Some of you have attended church more often since you started coming to Hope City than you've ever attended church. And I think we've asked a lot of you in the last 3 months. With our marriage conference, with our women's conference, with the giving campaign, with the Christmas Eve services. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for inviting. Thank you for trusting us with your spiritual journey. And we're just getting started. One of the things that I love about this is whether you've been coming for 3 weeks or 3 years, we're all in this together now. This is our first Sunday here. This is our first memory that we get to create together as a new community in a new location. And I just want to say thank you. When we moved to Indianapolis to start Hope City, we knew that Indy did not need another church. There's a ton of great churches here. In fact, I applied to be a pastor at Traders Point. That's how much I love Traders Point, and I didn't get the job. But back in 2009, I applied to be a pastor at Traders Point, and God had other plans. But I love Indianapolis. I love the churches in Indianapolis. I love College Park and Traders Point and Mercy Road and Genesis and Northview. Most of you know that my son is a pastor at Northview, one of the student pastors at Northview. So I love the church in Indianapolis. And so when we moved here, we knew that we weren't coming here to fix the church in Indianapolis. What we wanted to come here to do is we wanted to be a part of a movement of God in the city of Indianapolis, a movement of hope. And we didn't have to be in the center of that movement. We just wanted to be a part of it. And so when we moved here, one of the very first meetings that I had was with Josh Huseman, who's the pastor of Mercy Road Church, and we were talking about our vision for his vision for Mercy Road, our vision for Hope City. And I said, I don't want to just start a church. I want to be a part of a movement of churches that transform the spiritual climate of our city. And he got tears in his eyes. He's like, that's exactly what I want to do. And so we started an organization a couple of months later called Multiply Indiana. Before Hope City ever existed, we started an organization called Multiply Indiana. It's a church planting organization, and we give $50,000 to churches to start in the state of Indiana. And over the last 3 years, Hope City was the first beneficiary of that organization. We were the first Multiply Indiana church. And over the last 3 years, we've been a part of starting 11 churches. 6 of them in the city and 5 of them outside of the city of Indianapolis. We're going to be starting 2 more. Joel Larison, many of you know, who's taught here. He leads worship here. He's starting a new church in Kokomo. We've already given him $50,000 to start that church. He brings a crew of people down with him. His children's people have shadowed Holly and her children's people. He was texting me this week, where did you order your chairs? I'm like, not a good week. Joel, I can't help you with your logistics. I'm dealing with my own logistics. Our hope is, our desire is, we're not the church in Indianapolis. We're part of the biggest church in Indianapolis, the Church of Jesus Christ. And it takes every single church to reach people. And if every single church was full this morning to capacity, there would still be 1 million people sitting on the outside looking in. Right? So there are a lot of churches, and many of you drove past a lot of churches just to come here. Right? Some of you, this is closer to you. Some of this is further away from you. But we're not the only church, but we want to be a part of a movement of churches that bring hope to our city. And one of the things that I have realized is that movements are always made up of God-ordained moments. If you want to be a part of a movement, if you want to be a part of a movement in your life spiritually, if you want to be a part of a movement that's bigger than you, movements are always made up of God-ordained moments. And so I just want to share with you just a few God-ordained moments that are in the history of our church. August 30th, 2015, that was the first informational meeting for Hope City. It was in my living room. If you were here, or not here, if you were in my living room in August of 2015, would you stand? I know one, there's 3 or 4 people here. Go ahead and stand. Okay. All right, you guys can sit down. That was the first God-ordained moment of Hope City. We said, okay, we're going to send out a Facebook invite, and whoever wants to come. Right? And people are like, okay, when's the church going to start? We don't know when this church is going to start. Where's it going to be? We don't know where it's going to be. It's going to be amazing, though. And some of you have been blindly following that for the last 3.5 years, and which I'm so grateful for. Right? But there's God-ordained moments. If those people had not been in our living room on August 30th, 2015, Hope City may not even exist. September 18th, 2016 was our first Sunday in the Ritz-Charles. We launched public services in the Ritz-Charles. If you came to Hope City while we were meeting at the Ritz-Charles, would you just stand right now? If your first experience at Hope City, or you attended Hope City while we were at the Ritz-Charles, okay? That's awesome. It's awesome. You guys can sit down. That was a huge year for us, right? We launched public services. We grew. We started small groups. We started moving the church from just being a portable church on Sunday mornings into homes throughout the week. It was just this year of development, this year of foundational growth. And then a year into that journey, we had complications with our lease at the Ritz-Charles, and so we moved into our Main Street location. And that was November 5th, 2017, and we call that NASCAR Sunday because we didn't have any chairs, and so everybody brought lawn chairs, and so that was really awesome. And some of you brought extracurricular drinks too with your lawn. No, I'm just joking, you did not. You wanted to though. You're like, I have a holder here, you know. If you came to Hope City over the last 2 years at our Main Street location, would you just stand? If your first experience at Hope City was on Main Street. It's awesome. You guys can grab a seat. See, God places these moments in our life, and as you look back over 2019 personally, I bet you can see these God-ordained moments that He can use and catalyze to become a movement of His work and His Spirit and transformation in your life. That's what God does. And so as we start a new year and enter a new facility, I want to share with you just the vision that I have for us as a church, and I think it's a vision for you personally. Because the church is not a building, we've proven that over the last 3 years. We've been in 3 different buildings in the last 3 years. We've proven the church is not a location, the church is people. And so as you and I embrace God's vision for our life, then we're capable and able of living out that vision corporately. And so I want to look at a couple different passages of scripture, but one of my favorite proverbs in the book of Proverbs is Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18. It says this: if people can't see what God is doing, they stumble all over themselves. But when they attend to what He reveals, they're most blessed. Now, another translation, one that you might be more familiar with, says, where there is no vision, the people perish. I like how the New Living Translation translates, though, if people can't see what God is doing, they stumble all over themselves. And if you're a part of a church and you can't see what God is doing, then you're going to stumble. You're going to stumble in your life spiritually. You're going to stumble in your life. The church is going to stumble in its life spiritually as well. But if you're a part of a church and you can clearly see God's movement, and you can clearly see God-ordained moments, and you can clearly see God's hand at work, then you're most blessed. And can I just tell you, January 5th, 2020, I feel most blessed. Because I feel like we are a part of something very, very special. If you're following along on our Hope City app and you're looking at the notes, I put them on the screen as well, but what we're experiencing is not normal. And the opportunity we have is very special. What we are experiencing together is not normal. The video that played before the service, those weren't just random communities that we put on a map and made it and animated it just for fun. Those are 16 of the 26 zip codes that we draw from as a church. Now, for a church our size and a church our age, it is very rare to be a regional church. But I think because we're portable and because we say we're a church for Indianapolis, and one of the things we said at our old location is we're not a Carmel church, we're an Indianapolis church that just happens to meet in Carmel. Well, now this building actually sits in Hamilton County, but it has an Indianapolis address. And so I think it's the best of all worlds, right? Because it's this launching pad for us to be this movement of hope in our city. And what we get to be a part of is very special. And it's not because Trish and I are special. It's not because the staff is special. It's because God is doing something special in our midst that you can't quantify, you can't purchase, and you can't create. See, people can start churches and people can do church, but movements only are created and sustained by the Spirit of God. And I just want to share with you, just in the last 6 months, what has taken place. 100 volunteers served at Urban Act Academy in July. Urban Act is our partner school that we serve down in Indianapolis. $1,400 was given to the Dollar Club to invest in Urban Act and Hope City Family in Need. 100 women were at our very first women event. $4,200 of Thanksgiving meals were donated to Urban Act Academy so that every family at Urban Act Academy had a Thanksgiving meal this year. 138 couples were at our very first marriage conference. $15,000 was given to Urban Act Academy for their after-school community room. $160,000 was given in December. $160,000 was given in December. $497,000 was given in 2019. $376,000 was given last year. Not 2018, year before 2019. You know what I'm trying to say. Over 700 people were at our 4 Christmas Eve services. Like, we very rarely talk about attendance numbers because those things are what we measure success by, but the things above all of that is what I feel like is successful. It's the hearts that are being transformed. It's the marriages that are being restored. It's the ministry that goes on beyond the walls of whatever building that we're in, right? And these numbers they're numbers, but they're important because they're an indication of God's movement in our life, God's movement in the life of our church. Your generosity and your sacrifice, it is absolutely unbelievable, and I feel so honored not just to be one of the pastors of this church, but to be a part of this community. And in the book of Hebrews is one of my favorite books in the New Testament. And in chapter 11 of Hebrews, the author lists for us ordinary people like you and I that lived extraordinary lives. And they changed the course of human history, and they changed the way that we interact with God because of one word, faith. The 11th chapter of Hebrews is what a lot of theologians call the Hall of Faith. We have the Hall of Fame that we look to put baseball players, football players, basketball players in, and that's really important. It's this really elite group of people. It's the best of the best. It's the people that have this sustained greatness throughout their career. And chapter 11 of Hebrews is one of those chapters where it just lists all of these people who did not just great things for God, but they trusted God with small things that became great. And this word keeps appearing over and over again before every single person that's listed there. By faith Abel, by faith Enoch, by faith Noah, by faith Abraham, by faith Isaac, by faith Jacob, by faith Joseph, by faith Moses, by faith Rahab. Over and over again, 27 times in the chapter 11 of Hebrews alone, the word faith is used. And then it says this, it won't be on the screen, I just wanted to read it to you in Hebrews 11, 32 and 33. It says, how much more do I need to say? It would take too long to recount the stories of faith of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and all the prophets. By faith, these people overthrew kingdoms and they ruled with justice, and they received what God had promised them. They shut the mouths of lions, they quenched the flames of fire, and they escaped death by the edge of the sword. Their weakness was turned to strength, and they became strong in battle, and they put whole armies to flight. 27 times the word faith is used. And what made these men and women great, it wasn't their Instagram followers, and it wasn't their social status, and it wasn't their business accomplishments, and it wasn't their financial portfolio or their 401k. It wasn't the title that they put outside their office or on their desk. It wasn't their athletic ability. It was faith. It was faith. And people who lived in obscurity transformed the way that we get to interact with God. After he lists all these great men and women, he says in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, these two verses that I just want to share with you this morning. He says, therefore, after he lists all these people, since we're surrounded by such a great crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. So what I want to do is I want to take 4 principles right out of these 2 verses that I feel like are going to be foundational for us personally and foundational for us corporately as a church as a vision for 2020. What do I hope for you in 2020? What do I hope for us as a church in 2020? And the first is this, that we live with an awareness of what God is doing. Look at Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great crowd of witnesses. You may not know this, but this church is older than most of us. I don't know if you could tell by walking in, all right? This church has been around for a long time. 1961 is the year that I know that this building was built because there is a cornerstone on the back wall right over here that says Hope 1961. And I don't know if you realize that for the last 59 years, there has been someone planting seeds of hope on this corner. There's been someone representing the Church of Jesus Christ planting seeds of hope in this community. There's been someone praying that a movement of hope would reverberate throughout our city. And they had a vision for what it could be and what it should be. And back in the 70s and 80s, this place was running 1,000 people. There's a pastor that's pretty famous in pastoral circles named A.W. Tozer, who was the pastor of this church. And every single church goes through cycles. Every single church goes through growth cycles and declines. And they're not as large as they used to be. But the seeds of hope have been planted. And I want you to imagine, last Sunday, after you guys rocked it, you guys knocked it out, we were moved in here probably within 4 hours last Sunday, and packed up and everything was moved in. And then we had a group of people that stayed back and cleaned the other building to where Trish and I didn't have to do anything. And we went back and turned a light off, and that was about it, and just relocked the door. And it was unbelievable, the servant-hearted people that served last week. But anyway, we were walking out of the building that we'd only been in for 2 years, and I start crying. Now that doesn't surprise some of you. I cry at everything. I cry at Kleenex commercials, right? I cry at everything. Tricia started crying, and it was just this emotional. I started thinking about the people that were baptized in that building and the babies that were dedicated in that building. There's an emotional attachment to that physical space, even though it was an insurance agency, even though it used to be the DMV, right? I still loved it, all right? It was ours, right? Even though it had 9-foot ceilings that I couldn't stand, right? It was ours. And I can't imagine the humility, and I can't imagine the kingdom mindset that you have to have after 59 years. Some of the people in this church, Hope Church, have been here 59 years, to move out of this room and into the multi-purpose room. Not because they love me, because they believe in the kingdom of God. They believe the kingdom of God is bigger than one church. Right? There's this awareness of all that God is doing. I didn't know that until Greg said it. He lived with my email to him for 30 days once it got to him before he called me. There was this internalizing, there was this prayerful thought of maybe God is up to something bigger than us. And somehow a group of people said, you know what, we're going to inconvenience ourselves and we're going to move into the other room and we're going to give you the biggest room in the church. We're going to give you most of the lobby area. We're going to give you the kids wing, and we're just going to allow our facility to serve your mission. That is God doing something big. That is God at work. Greg and his wife Donnell and I were talking a few days ago, and you guys know this, there's a rising popularity in multi-site churches. One church, multiple locations. There's franchising aspect of the church, which is very effective, and it works for a lot of different churches. And I'm not going to bash it, because God may call us to plant a campus someday, and so I'm not going to stand up here and go, that's not good, because it might be something that happens for us in the future. But one of the things I think is interesting is we have gone the opposite direction with this move. We're not one church in multiple locations. We're multiple churches in one location. All right, I love that. But here's the deal. What ties us together is this belief that hope changes everything. Is this belief from 1961 to today that God has ordained this place to disseminate hope into our city. And I think we are set up better than ever before to continue to walk in the vision that God has created for us. Personally, I want 2020, I want us to live with an awareness every single week when we come in here that God is up to something big. And I want you to live with an awareness every single day of 2020 that God is up to something big in your life. I want you to be aware of what God is doing in your family. I want you to be aware of what God is doing in your office. I want you to be aware of what God is doing in your friendships. I want you to be aware of what God is doing in your neighborhood. I want you to look at your neighbors and don't just think about how much they annoy you or how they don't, rake their leaves or take their trash bins in for 3 or 4 days. I want you to think about your eternal purpose in living where you live. I want you to see a bigger picture of all that God might want to do and all that God might be up to in your every single day life. May 2020 be a year that we all grow in our ability to see what God is doing so we don't stumble all over ourselves. So we take steps toward God. Secondly, we need to strip off anything that slows us down. Look at verse 1 of chapter 12. Let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that easily traps us. One of the things that slowed us down as a church in our old location was our rent. It was like this burden and this blessing, that building. right? I told our operations team, I felt like that building was my greatest leadership accomplishment and my greatest leadership mistake, all wrapped up in one. Right? Because we had to have a place to go. At the same time, that $15,000 a month, it was daunting. It was big. It was hard. And it was not going to be good stewardship moving forward because our rent was going to go up over the next 3 years, each year for the next 3 years. And I remember getting to a place, John Lunsford and I had a meeting with our building owner. And the owner left, and I just said to John, I don't know where we're going to go, but we're not going to stay here. We're not going to do it, not for that price. And it wasn't until I got to that place that I felt like God was willing to move. Because I was holding on to that building as this security. I was fearful that if we didn't have that building, we wouldn't have you. If I'm just being straight up honest with you. And so that building became this suffocating security blanket around my heart where I had to hold on to it at all costs. And it wasn't until I was willing to just say, okay, God, I surrender that. I give that up. That he was then able to move in the life of our church. So we could have probably been here a year earlier. It's my fault. Sorry. I'm just joking, right? But I think the same thing is true in our life. We want to go further, faster, right? Well, you can't go faster until you take off things that are weighing you down, right? You can't go further, faster in your marriage until you identify the things that are wrong in your marriage. You can't go further, faster in your relationships until you identify the things that are making your relationships dysfunctional. You can't go further, faster spiritually until you identify the sin that you keep struggling with. Right? So the writer of Hebrews is saying, hey, if you want to go further, if you want to grow in your faith, you got to, before you can run fast, you got to strip off everything that's holding you back. And that's humbling, and that's intimidating, and that's hard. And that is not easy to do. And so maybe you've been struggling with the same thing for years, and you always say that you're sorry, but your temper is still there. Maybe this is the year that you finally say, you know what? I need to get help dealing with my anger. Maybe you're going to get your dating life together, and this year's going to be different, but you just keep dating dysfunctional people. You've said over and over again, this is going to be the year that you get your marriage back on track, but you've been saying that for the last 10 years. You're still in the same place financially this year than you were this time last year and this time the year before that. You can't speed up until you strip off what's slowing you down. What if 2020 was the year that you finally confessed that sin to God? What if 2020 was the year that you finally asked for help financially? Not to borrow money, but to get out of the debt that you're in. What if 2020 was the year that you finally surrendered your marriage to Jesus? What if 2020 was the year you finally asked God to show up in an area that's really intimidating to you, that you fully surrendered it to him? Next, we need to run the race that God has set before us. Look at verse 2, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. Can I just tell you, as a church, we have a race to run. And some of you I know are tired, like I'm tired. We need to take a nap before we run a race. I get it, all right? But I'm not talking about things that we have to do for God. I'm talking about the mission that God has given us that's way bigger than us. We have an eternal mission and we have a limited amount of time. And our race is different than Traders Point. Our race is different than Northview. And our race is different than Genesis. And our race is different than I-10. And our race is different than Mercy Road. And I think that is great. We're all going to the same place. We're taking different routes to get there. And that's why we need other churches. But God has set a race before us, Hope City. And we're going to run the race of providing a place for people to belong before they believe. We're going to run the race of helping people experience heart transformation and not just behavior modification. We're going to run a race of being a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-generational community. We're going to run the race of doing life with one another, even when it's messy and even when it's hard. And we're going to run the race of providing a place on Sunday mornings where people can feel that they belong, that they're at home. They can find a place that they love so they can experience God's love. We're going to run a race of serving our city in extravagant ways and partnering with Urban Act Academy to change a generation's life so they can change a community. And you have a race to run personally. And can I just tell you, as we start a new year, your race is not your sister's race. And your race is not your parents' race. And your race is not your coworker's race. And your race is not your neighbor's race. And the quickest way to fall out of love with the race and the mission that God has given you personally is to compare your race to someone else. To look at the race that someone else is running and go, well, I wish I had their running shoes. I wish I was on their path. I wish I had their upward mobility. I wish I had their husband. I wish I had their wife. I wish I had their house. And you compare the race that God has set before you with the race that other people are running, and you get discouraged. And as you start a new year, God has a race for you to run. He has a mission for you. He has a vision for your life. And it might involve other people, but it doesn't call you to compare your life with other people. And finally, as we close, we need to keep our eyes on Jesus. Look at verse 2. It says, we do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. We have big goals in 2020. We have a bigger room. We could fill this room up. We don't have any chairs. These are all the chairs we have, but we have a bigger room. But I'd love to see this room filled up 2 times each Sunday. I want more of you to join connection groups this year than you did last year. I want us to serve and give back more this year with our time and our talent and our resources. I want us to reach this neighborhood. I want this building to be a launching pad of hope that we long to share with our city. But the most important thing that we do as a church is to keep our eyes on Jesus. Because we can start focusing on all of those goals, and then the goals become God. Right? And that's where churches get sideways. And so as we move into a new year, we need to rededicate our lives corporately and rededicate our lives personally to keeping our eyes on Jesus. Watching more of Jesus will lead you to follow Jesus more. You see, it's Jesus that brings hope. It's Jesus that saves. It's not the quality of our production. It's Jesus that restores marriages. It's not the quality of our worship. It's Jesus that allows relationships to be reconciled. It's not how hip or how cool we are or pretend to be. I think so often what happens is we get so sidetracked on things that we think are important, and then we lose focus on the one thing that has transformative power. And so we're going to make improvements to the building. We're going to try to increase the quality of our worship experience, but that will not be our guide and that will not be our God. We're going to focus on Jesus. And maybe in 2020, what you need to do more than anything, you don't need another self-help book, and you don't need to go to another conference, you don't need to go to another marriage event, you don't need to do anything other than to keep your eyes on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of your faith. Because it was for the joy set before him that he took on our shame and he took on our guilt and he endured the cross to the point of death. And that transforms lives and that transforms hearts and that changes everything. See, great movements of God start with small acts of obedience. And you know what discipleship is? We get so amped up and try to quantify discipleship. You know what discipleship is at its core? Discipleship is saying yes to Jesus more today than you did yesterday. It's giving Jesus more of your heart today than you gave him yesterday. It's surrendering more of your life to him today than you did yesterday. And it's saying yes to him tomorrow more than you did today. And it's saying yes to him more the next day than you did the day before that. It's getting in this posture, this rhythm of just saying, okay, God, you want me to do that? Yes. You want me to do that? Yes. You want me to surrender that? Yes. You want me to do this? Yes. And as you say yes more to Jesus, he directs your life. He enables you to be the husband that you're called to be. He allows you to be the wife that you need to be. He allows you to be the parent that you so desperately want to be. He allows those relationships to be restored. And you don't have to wear yourself out trying harder. You can surrender more. And when you surrender more and you say yes more, he shows up more. He transforms more. And he enables us to be individuals and the church that he has in mind. And that's our vision for 2020. I've never gotten into the one word thing for the new year. I've never done that. I know a lot of you do that. I know a lot of people do that. A lot of people spend a lot of time, which is amazing. Seeking God, I need one word. And I'm ADD, so one word, I feel boxed in. I don't know, that holds me back. Just one word. I need more than one. And so I just have never done it. And about a month ago, I was at Starbucks, actually going over my Christmas message series. So it was maybe even longer than that. And I felt like God gave me one word for Hope City, and one word for me personally, and this is the word breakthrough. And I think this year is going to be a year of breakthrough for us corporately, and I think this year is going to be a year of breakthrough for some of you personally. I think this is going to be the year that some of you finally break through financially. I think this is going to be the year that some of you finally break through in your marriage. I think this is going to be the year that some of you finally break through in the quality of your dating life. I think this is going to be the year that some of you finally break through in a strained relationship with your adult kids. I'm believing that. And I think that we're just at the tip, we're just at the surface of all that God is going to do. And we can look back and we can celebrate all that God has done over the last 3 years, but as I said earlier, we're just getting started. And God continues to give us new beginnings and new blessings to share with a community that is in desperate need of hope. Let's pray together. God, we thank you for all that you've done, for all that you're going to do. And we ask you, God, that you just do it again. You continue to show up, you continue to guide, and we're going to keep our eyes on you, and we're going to trust you in incredible ways. That's our prayer in Jesus' name. And everybody said,